Well, Wanda, I am so honored to meet you.
Thank you.
Enjoyed your book tremendously, and you must be beside yourself with all the praise that it is getting. I have read so many online descriptions of it, which they are just lavishing you with words like brilliantly nuanced and striking commentary. So tell me how you feel about that, and give us a short summary of the novel.
Sure. Well, wow is all I can say. It has been a journey, but I wouldn't trade a thing of it. I'm so excited. Like November 2nd is like right around the corner, and here we are. But All Our Little Secrets is the story of a Black female lawyer who becomes embroiled in a really dangerous conspiracy after the death of her boss. Elise Littlejohn seemingly has everything going for her. She's got great looks, a well-paying job, a great group of friends, and everything changes one cold January morning when she goes to the office, the executive suite, for a meeting with her boss. And there she discovers him dead, and she does the unthinkable. She walks away as if she's seen nothing. The reason is because she has a dark cachet of secrets, including a small-town past, a younger brother who spent some time on the other side of the law. So she decides she can't go back there again. Soon after, she's promoted to replace her boss, and things take a turn for the worse. The police start to investigate the mysterious death. People are gossiping around the company. And soon after, she discovers some very shady dealings in the executive suite. Soon, her professional and her personal lives collide as she tries to save her brother and race to stop a really sinister conspiracy.
So, you know, as writers, we're always talking about we want to hook in the readers, and your opening scene really does that. You know, it just grabs you immediately because you're, a page or two in, and suddenly she's confronted with the dead body of her boss, right?
Yeah.
Was that hard to think of? Is your boss watching? No, just kidding.
Cease. Interestingly enough, there are two scenes in the book that never changed throughout an incalculable amount of revisions and edits. And it was that opening scene where she goes to the executive suite, and then another scene that occurs in the middle of the book that's pretty pivotal. But those two scenes never changed. And it's interesting because that opening scene kind of came to me, I won't say who, but just somebody I worked with, and it was a rather tumultuous working relationship, and I was just like, ugh. Not that I'd ever want to do something like that to anyone, but I just thought, what if? Which I think is the question that a lot of writers kind of start out with. What if this really crazy thing happened? And so, yeah, that scene just kind of came to me.
Well, you take a little bit of reality and then you spin it off into this fictional world that goes in different directions from whatever your reality was. And that sort of leads into my next question. I don't know if you know this, but you and I share in common a couple things. We're both mothers of 3 children.
Yep.
We've both been involved in high-powered, intense, male-dominated fields. So I'm an emergency medicine doctor. I write medical fiction. You're a corporate attorney, and now you write thrillers.
Yes.
And you've probably been getting a lot of questions about this already, but I think people want to know how much of yourself is in your protagonist. Especially as a debut author, I think people assume that it's all autobiographical. And so tell us about Elise and what her strengths and weaknesses are, what you like about her, what similarities you share, and what differences you have with her.
Sure. I have already been asked that question, like, is this based on you? And I'm
Number
like,
one question people ask.
Exactly. And I can state here, uncategorically that no, I've never killed anyone or run away from a dead body or any of those things. But I think that some of Elise's experiences have been some of my own lived experiences, particularly around the office environment and the toxicity of that environment. I mean, I've been that woman in a meeting where I suggested an idea or an initiative, and it was, roundly dismissed. And then 5 minutes later, a white male says the same thing verbatim, and everybody praises him for it. I've been that person who, as easy as the name Wanda is to pronounce, it's been, mispronounced, it's been joked about, all those little slights. Someone asking to touch my hair. I've been racially profiled in a store more times than I care to count. So yeah, some of those things I took from real life, in fact. But as for Elise, I love her strength. I love the fact that even when she was 14 years old, she decided to make a plan. Not your typical plan, but she decided to take action. She took agency. I like the fact that she's so devoted to her family. There's nothing she wouldn't do for her brother Sam and Vera. And I like that determination she has, that she keeps getting knocked down, but she gets up to fight another day.
She's a wonderful character.
Thank you.
And she's imperfect. She's flawed, just like
very
we all
flawed.
are. Yeah. But those flaws are not your flaws.
No. No.
Well, I have found that a lot of my readers, or I would say a significant minority of them, are in the healthcare profession in some way. And that includes many of my colleagues over the years. So I'm curious, have any of the people you work with in the legal profession read the book yet? And if so, how have they reacted?
Oh, God, no. In fact, no. Extended family, friends, colleagues, no one knew I had written a book until the pre-order link went live.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, how
Yes.
did you keep that quiet? Because I babbled to everybody I was writing a book, which was a huge mistake.
Right? Yeah. I guess because I kind of know what comes of that, which is, how's the book coming? Yeah. How's it coming? But I kept it so close to the vest for another reason. I was learning how to write a book. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure that I could pull this off, When I started this book years and years ago, I wrote as a lawyer, but I'd never written anything on a creative kind of basis. And so I was learning how to write a book, and I didn't know whether, we'd be sitting here today, whether I'd say, yes, I have a book publishing, on November 2nd. So I kept it close to the vest just to see where it would go. I don't think I told my husband I was writing until I won a contest. And I entered the Thriller Fest Conference Best First Sentence contest. And I won. And I thought, I probably ought to tell him this.
That's when you told your husband?
Yes.
Get out.
Because I just kind of squirreled away when I had the time to write on airplanes, here. And so I kept
Isn't there
it
like this paragraph on the first page that says lawyers are good at keeping secrets?
Yes.
I guess doctors not so much. But so if the number one question you get is going to be, are you Elise? The number two question you're going to get, and maybe the number one, is going to be, how did you do this? How did you have time to do this? What is your publication story? How long did it take? How did you make it work?
Oh, wow.
Because you're going from a really demanding job to another really demanding job.
Yeah, true. Wow, my publication journey, how much time do you have? It has been a journey indeed. I was talking with someone recently, and I kind of figured out, I calculated it all, and I started like the very, very first draft 13 years ago. And I probably got about almost halfway through the book, and then I put it away. I put it away because I had convinced myself nobody's going to want to read a book about a 40-ish black woman who works with really awful people who do really awful things. And I said, this is all folly. I've got a great job. Just sink into the life that you have. And I put it away. And about 6 years ago, I had a bit of a health scare. And as I went through it, I kept thinking to myself, you know, gosh, I do everything for everyone else. I have 3 kids, I have a husband, I have this job, and I am so many things to so many other people, and what am I doing for me? And I knew I always loved to write, so I pulled that manuscript back out, and I looked at it, and it was really bad. It was really bad, but that's okay because I could make something better. At least I had something to work with. So I got serious about it. I started taking classes. I did some online classes. I eventually worked up enough nerve to apply to the Yale Writers Workshop. And I say I worked up the nerve because I had to make an application and send in a writing sample. Now remember, nobody knows I'm writing this book, so this means I'm putting myself out there. And miracle upon miracles, I got in. And it was just a really awesome experience. I met really wonderful people that I'm still very friendly with now. But I knew I had to learn about the craft of writing. I had to learn about pacing and characterization. I entered some online contests, as I mentioned. I entered a mentoring program that starts online called Pitch Wars.
Oh yeah, I'm a Pitch Wars failure.
Stop. I entered Pitch Wars. I was Pitch Wars class of 2018.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So I met a really lovely woman, an author, Wendy Hurd. Go buy her books because they're just phenomenal. And we spent 3 months where, you know, I had this full manuscript, but it was still a bit of a mess. And so we kind of went through it. I changed some scenes and we did all of that. At the end of Pitch Wars, as you know, there's an agent showcase. And so all the entrants get an opportunity to post the first page of their manuscript. Agents come in, they can see it, and they can request to see the full manuscript. So once I got in and I did all these edits, I was like, I'm getting an agent now. And on the day of the showcase, I got an overwhelming number of agents who responded positively, and all of them turned me down. They read the manuscript and they were like, this is nice, but I don't think this is for me.
It's so humbling every step of the way, right?
It really is, isn't it? It is really very humbling. And I thought, oh my gosh. So I kind of sat and nursed my wounds for a few days. Fortunately, because I didn't tell anybody about this book, my husband knew and my older kids knew by now. So they knew I was a little disappointed. So I just kind of said, what am I going to do? And my first inclination was to put the book away again. And I was like, that just doesn't feel right because I've done so much. And by this time, I had fallen in love with Elise Littlejohn. I mean, I was rooting for this woman every step of the way. And I was like, we're going to see you in print.
Because it's not enough to have real problems, you have to have fictional problems too.
Because I have to have fictional problems as well. Exactly. But I attended a conference a couple years before Pitch Wars called Thriller Fest, which is held in New York City every year. And I'd already signed up to attend Thriller Fest because I thought I was going to be going to Thriller Fest with an agent, but that didn't happen. So I had already signed up to attend the conference. And as part of Thriller Fest, they have what they call Pitch Fest. So they have a room full of agents. You kind of look and see what they're requesting. You can go up and pitch your book. And I said, you know, I'm going to give it one last shot. And I went to Thriller Fest and I went to this Pitch Fest event. And I had already scoped out the agents I was going to check. Now, keep in mind, more than half of them had already rejected me, so I was like, okay, so they're out. But there were a few that I had not pitched to, and I said, okay, here's my list. And I had a list of maybe like 4 or 5. And the very first one I went up to, was a very lovely woman named Lori Galvin of Aveda's Creative Management. And she said, tell me what your book's about. And I pretended like I was sitting across the table from a girlfriend, and I was telling her about all this really ugly stuff that happened at work. And when I finished, she said, wow, that sounds really good. Send me the full manuscript. Well, I was so excited, I took her business card and skipped out and didn't even talk to the other 3 that I had planned to pitch to. And thank God, she signed me up. She said, I love this book. A day later, after I sent it to her, she's like, I'm loving this book, and I'd like to represent you. So we started on revisions, and about 9 months later, because at some point, we started on revisions in fall of 2019. By 2020, spring 2020, we were in the midst of a pandemic. And at some point, I kind of stopped writing altogether. And then in June, we had Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd death. And at that point, I was just like, oh my gosh, I just don't even know whether this is a book that I should even be putting out into the world. And Lori, my agent, convinced me, oh, indeed it is. So we went out on submission July 2020, and 12 days later, it was in auction.
Wow.
13 years.
So that's
Do not give up.
completely inspiring to every aspiring writer out there, that
thanks.
Story. I mean, that's the dream, right?
Yeah,
That
it
someday
is.
somebody's going to love the work as much as you do, and it's going to
Right.
become real.
Right. I
Yeah.
tell everyone who's writing, don't give up. You never know how close you are. I was ready to put this book in the drawer. And I said, I'll take a chance on it, one last chance. And, as they always say, all you need is one yes. Mm-hmm. And I got there. So don't give up. That's what I always tell people. Don't give up.
Well, I mean, I think maybe one of the reasons the book resonates with so many people, though, even so far, is that it doesn't shy away from some of the really harsh realities that women and men of color face in the workplace and in society. You touch on racism and sexism and assault and tokenism and conscious and unconscious bias. And those things are really the core of the book. Yeah. So I'm curious, if in the portrayal in the book and in real life, if you find that a lot of people don't see a distinction between overt and more subtle forms of discrimination.
I'm an eternal optimist, so I like to think that people are smart enough now that, they don't go around using racial epithets and telling racist jokes in the workplace.
So
right, exactly. I think that stuff still occurs, but I like to think that people are really kind of moving past that. But I think that, a lot of discrimination, it's what I call death by 1,000 indignities. It's those little microaggressions, oh, let me smell your hair, let me touch your hair. Or, a man telling a woman, oh, I took care of that because I didn't think you could handle that, was pretty tough. Or, all those little things that people think are innocuous. Oh, I just meant that, as a joke. They're not a joke. Whether you are, tearing apart someone's name, instead of just saying, excuse me, could you tell me how to pronounce your name? Or those kind of things that just slice away at a person's humanity and their dignity. And I think those are the things that I hope readers who aren't really familiar with kind of this level of racism will take away from the book, that, oh, I never thought of it that way. Or, the fact that some people can walk inside a store and immediately get help where others of us may not. If I can just get people to stop and think, am I an ally or am I helping to perpetuate some of this?
Yeah, and Elise in the book faces a lot of these things, but one of the elements I loved the most about her is her relationships with other women in the book. So she has this amazing community of support even when she's little and she's going through these almost unfathomable difficulties, she has support in the form of a woman who takes care of her. And then in her later life, she has these dear friends that are like ride or die with her, right? So tell us about what inspired those portrayals.
Wow. As for the women in the book, I think they're like an amalgam of the women that I know, the women that have been in my life. Like Vera, for example, is like my mom, my grandmom, and a couple aunts and a next door neighbor all rolled up into one. But every woman, nearly every woman in the book is on a journey. Some with marginal success, some with a little more success. And that goes for, Martha, Elisa's mom, or Vera, or even Willow and Grace. They're all kind of on this journey, and they're all kind of spectrums of these women that we know who, had another life they could have lived, or been another type of person had they had the opportunity that, racism stole away from them. So I've been an advocate for women for the better part of my life. I feel like it's a personal responsibility. I need to pay back all those women who came before me, who, got up every day and worked hard so that I could have a future that they didn't see for themselves.
Oh, that's incredibly poignant, especially when I think of your character that helped raise Elise when she was little, because she didn't have those opportunities at all, and she was clearly a compelling, capable woman.
Exactly.
So she passed that on to another generation and held her up.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a beautiful part of the book.
Thank you.
Well, another source of, I guess, inspiration for you has been your public library.
Yes.
I feel like every author has a great library story that they are burning to tell. So let's hear yours, because you've got a good one, and we are sitting in it right now.
Yes, we are. We are sitting in it, as a matter of fact. I've always loved libraries ever since I was a little kid. And, my mom would take me to the library, or if she had to work, she would make my older sister take me. My older sister was about 5 years older than me, so when I was probably 6 or 7, she would make my sister take me to the library. My sister, she wanted to hang out with her friends. She didn't want to be stuck in a library. And so whenever she took me, it was always, I was getting the bum's rush. Come on, pick out a book. Come on, hurry up. But I just love kind of languishing among the aisles and the shelves and kind of,
I could live here.
Right, exactly. Or going up to a librarian and saying, I like stories about this. And I don't know what it is with librarians. They're like magical unicorns. They seem to know the exact right book to recommend. And so, of course, when I started out on this journey to write this book, I knew I couldn't write in the office. I wanted to commit when I finally decided I'm doing this about 6 years ago. I knew I had to commit time every day to do it. So I couldn't write in the office, because when you're in the office, somebody's always stopping by, have a question. So I would come into this library, the Vinings branch of the Cobb County Library System. I would come in this library every day, and I would sit in the same carrel every day, and I would write for an hour and a half. And it's so funny, because the days that I couldn't, if I had a meeting or something like that, it almost felt like, how joggers feel like, oh gosh, I didn't get in my daily run. I felt like, oh my gosh, I didn't get in my daily write. And so I became enamored with this library and these librarians. And it's so funny, because one day, usually the time I got over here was between 11:30 and 12. And usually my carrel was open. But I got over here one day, and I kind of waved over at the service desk to the librarians, and I skipped on back to the back of the library, and it was kind of like, the cartoon characters where you're like, ah! It was like, some guy was sitting in my seat in my carrel. And it was like, oh my gosh. And I was taken aback for a few seconds. I was like, okay, what do I do? So I kind of looked around, and there was, of course, there's another seat. There's a whole library of seats. But I kind of stumbled down to the one at the end, and I sat there, and for the life of me, Kimmery, I just couldn't get those scenes to come together. It's like, I'm not in my seat. I can't see the window, and gosh, now I'm too far from the plug, even though I didn't need the plug. But I was just like, that's my seat. So I don't recommend that people become that attached to a library. But man, this place it's been invaluable on my publication journey. Even this very room, as I sat down, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I took one of those writing courses where I set out to learn the craft right here in this very room. Libraries have always been invaluable to me, and librarians are magic. I love librarians. They're my favorite people.
They are. So Vining's Library, you're going to need to put a brass plaque on that seat over there.
Right.
You're going to come back into this branch in, a month, and see your book in the library here.
Gosh.
And then you will take a picture with it.
Isn't that crazy, though? Yeah. That just is blowing my mind that, in a month, my book will be like in libraries. It's a great feeling. It is surreal, but it's a great feeling.
Well, that's a perfect segue into our last question, which is kind of a softball, but tell me what your favorite thing is about this new second career that you have going on. What have you enjoyed the most about it?
It sounds a bit of a cliche, but I am really, really excited about the fact that I get to write all these stories that have been burning up inside of me. I've seen reviewers compare the book to, John Grisham's The Firm, and that is a lovely, lovely compliment, and I don't take it lightly, but I didn't set out to write legal stories. I want to write women's stories. Don't you think we have an incalculable number of stories to tell if we're just given the chance? And I'm blessed I get the opportunity to do that now.
I can't wait to see what you write next.
Thank you. It's in the works now. Yeah.
Well, this has been a huge pleasure. It's my honor to talk to you. Thank you so much for doing this for us.
Thank you, Kimmery. I enjoyed this. Thank you so much.